morning, everyone, and happy Saturday. My name is Callie, and this is another weekend of clarinets, cats, and coffee. In today's video, I am going to take you through the second part of the first movement of the Saint-Saens Sonata. And so if you tuned in last week, you already know that I've started a three-part series on the first movement of the sonata to kind of help get you guys started on what might be one of your first big repertoire pieces. So that's kind of cool. And if it's not, if you're a seasoned player and you've just never had a chance to learn or perform this piece, then I am excited to be part of your journey. So before we get into that, I want to thank my patrons for supporting my channel. You guys are awesome. I love your enthusiasm and your messages and everything you've done for me in the past year. If you love what I'm doing, please consider becoming a patron for as little as $3 a month. I have a link below. Also, I'm giving lessons over the summer virtually, so if you are interested in taking any lessons with me, be sure to go to my website and fill out the inquiry form, and I'll get in touch with you as soon as I hear from you. Now, let's talk about this section of the Saint-Saens. So last time we talked about counting in 12/8, learning the piece phrase by phrase, expressive playing, and a couple of tips about creating the illusion of a big crescendo and decrescendo here and there. So in this section, all of that same stuff applies, right? But I also want to just throw in a couple of pieces of advice. Now, one of the most difficult things I think about this is the counting, as I mentioned before. And the thing that clarinet players often run into, especially in this middle chunk here, is we tend to want to drag the tied notes, okay? So like, for example, the very first note here, you've got an F dotted quarter note tied over to an eighth note, and for whatever reason we see that time and we just hold on for a million years thinking that everything's fine, and then oh no, and then all of a sudden the measure is gone, right? So the biggest thing you could do here is just subdivide and subdivide really, really well in your head. Right? So subdividing will ensure that you're not rushing or dragging, but staying right in the pocket. Now, the section here before one is building up, and we want to try to kind of create a little bit of energy, a little bit of intensity, without going completely overboard, in my opinion, right? You want to kind of save that more sound for a little bit later on in this development section. I do try to build through this piano with each phrase kind of going through, and the two measures right before one, guys, it trips everybody up. But if you think about making these runs just a natural part of your breathing, then you'll never freak out about them ever again. So when you practice them very slowly, think about practicing them with the most natural breathing, the most relaxed breathing possible, right? So big deep breath when you play. And if you associate the scary part with deep relaxed playing, deep relaxed breathing, and fully in control breathing, then when you speed it up, the only thing having to work hard will be your fingers, because it gets easier as you go faster, right? It gets easier to breathe anyway as you go faster. So I would recommend really slow like that, and give yourself a little bit of a crescendo down into the low notes, so you have a bit more projection in a range of the clarinet that is really bad at projecting, right? So combine your expressive, slow practice with big, relaxed air, and little by little you can kick up the tempo on your metronome to meet whatever your goal tempo is. But the main thing is associate it with being relaxed and in control. Now, the trills here at 1 are often a nightmare, and I say you gotta count through the trills. If you're like me, my brain likes to shut off as soon as I start trilling, and then I'm like, oh crap, there's a grace note, what happened to everything? And then I'm like freaking out. So what I recommend is start by deciding how many trills you're actually going to put in that note. So bum ba dee da dum, ba da little ba da da dee da dum, ba da little ba dee dum. Like, even if you're doing 2 slow trills and then holding out the rest of the note before you do the grace note, that's going to be a lot easier for you to keep your place and count and be mindful about what you're doing rather than just and not thinking about what you're doing. So I suggest determine how many trills you're going to do and actually count in your head how many eighth notes are happening inside that dotted quarter. Now, the part of the 12/8, the second measure, or I frequently have the tendency, if I haven't done this in a while, to hold the 8th note that's tied over to the 16th note just a little bit too long. So don't be reactive to the piano. Bum, 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 bum. That's what the piano has there. Bum, ba-da-ba-dum, 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 ba-da-ba-dum. You come off of the piano's second 8th note right there. But if you wait for them to play that 8th note and then think about your notes, then the moment has passed. So you have to be really active and follow your internal subdivision and trust that it's all going to happen in time. So don't hold it as long as you want right there, just exactly in time, right? Bum, ba-da-ba-dum, 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 ba-da-ba-dum. Woo, that syncopation, it can really get you. Now, the next part, everybody for whatever reason gets the ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. That's like the same thing as 2 measures before, you're just adding an extra note there. So if you were able to do bum, ba-di-ba-dum, ba-di-ba-dum, if you're able to do that, then the 16th note passages following that will be a little bit easier. Now, everybody also likes to get tripped up here, and the scale that's going up, that starts on the low F. Now, here's the key to this, okay? Just think about your first 5 notes as being pick-up notes to the D flat on the 3rd beat. And then once you get to the D flat, it's just a D flat major scale all the way through. And technically it's D flat major leading up to that, right? Because you've got, you know, the 5 notes, the last 5 notes in the D flat major scale. However, that doesn't really help me very much in my thinking. So I think of those first 5 notes as pickups, and then da 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 da, and then I just go into autopilot like my fingers are doing D flat major for the rest of these 12 notes. And then I don't even look at the notes, I just think about the rhythm and think about the music and land on time in the next beat. So there's my trick there. Now, all of these articulated notes right here, this is the measure that is going to determine what tempo you play the whole piece at, okay? So I'd say if you can play this whole movement, at least at 72, this measure is going to be pretty doable. I don't recommend going any faster than like 84 because this still needs to kind of flow. But that 84 is like on the upper edge of what a lot of folks can tongue clearly, right? So make sure you choose a tempo that is attainable for this one measure here. And the secret to getting this to sound really clear and articulated and effortless is to articulate these notes but hold them out the full duration of time that is allotted to them, right? Which is half a beat. And if you play them all really staccato, they're going to sound really pecky and gross. So I think and that will make it just so much more musical and much more beautiful. So think about them all as having tenutos. The next thing you want to do to really be successful at articulating all of these notes is just put a big fat crescendo through that whole measure. Your wind is going to help power your tongue through that whole measure, and it's convenient because it's a sempre forte, which is the loudest dynamic you have in this whole movement, and you've got a big fat accent on a nice big low E right after that. So what could be more satisfying than just like crescendoing through a whole bunch of really angry low notes and then like coming crashing down on a big fat low E? This is like my favorite part of the whole piece, right? So that's my advice there. And then you have somewhere to go when you have this expressive diminuendo. Luke has come to visit, guys. Let's see. Okay, so my next little trick here comes actually right before the high D that you have to play. I recommend not breathing before you play that high D. I know there's a rest there, but if you have to breathe, reset your embouchure. That's really not enough time to reset everything and have the most beautiful, perfect, angelic start to that high D, right? So you have a lot of opportunities to take a nice, good breath at any of the eighth note rests before that. So just pick one, but don't breathe there. Don't breathe there. You'll have a much better success rate on that D if you don't. Yeah, and the end of this section here, guys, is like, this is like your last ditch effort to just really emote and express something special about this development section before everything just starts to fizzle out and kind of calm down, okay? So next week we are going to go through the end section of this first movement here, and I promise I'm gonna have a few different things to say than I did at the beginning. So in the meantime, guys, be sure to practice this stuff. I love playing with the Template app because you can mess with the metronome and you can really listen to the accompaniment. You could play along with the clarinetist that they recorded doing it too. And just remember, this is supposed to be fun. This is expressive, like you're doing this because you love music, okay? So have fun practicing this weekend. Have a wonderful week. And as always, happy practicing. So it has come to my attention that some of you don't like cats. I can't say I've had a lot of messages about your dislike of cats, but you know what? Look at him. You could pretend he's a penguin. I mean, he is black and white.